Welcome to the Pictures of Lily podcast, Vintage Edition. I'm your host, Lily Moayeri. I've been a music journalist since 1992, and I interview a lot of music-related people. This podcast is about my experience behind the story, what my experience is doing the interviews, just to give you a snapshot of what it's like on the other side of the digital recorder. Over the last couple of years of the Pictures of Lily podcast, we've shifted to the Vintage Edition, where I'm sharing my experiences about specific interviews with the bonus of original audio from the artists in those interviews. These interviews pull from my 33-year archive, many of which are recorded on cassette tape.
Pictures of Lily.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Pictures of Lily podcast, Vintage Edition. This is episode 102, the last episode of our 6th year. We publish monthly with a new episode posting on the second Wednesday of each month. You can find us on every platform by going to picturesoflily.com, where you can subscribe or follow us, and also connect to us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pandora, Amazon, and Audible. Although it's really best to listen to the podcast straight from the source at picturesoflily.com, as it is the highest quality audio and avoids copyright restrictions. This episode is my interview with Johnny Marr from 2003, which I'm dedicating to the late Ori Englander and also Ali Stevenson, who is still very much alive. They run Johnny Marvelous and also publish Dynamic, a fanzine dedicated to Johnny, as well as coming up and seeing through kind and thoughtful initiatives for Johnny. They personally helped me with some Johnny information for an article I wrote about 10 years ago, and I, in turn, contributed to Dynamic, which I will link in this episode's notes. I will also link to all the articles I've written about Johnny that are available online. There are a lot of them. We lost Ori this past summer, but she will always be remembered. Lots of love to her and Ali. Here are a few snapshots of my 2003 interview with Johnny Marr.
Get up off the ground, back on your feet. It's easily done. She didn't really hurt no one.
Before we move forward with this interview, I highly recommend checking out the episode with my first interview with Johnny in 2000 when he was in Electronic, and the classic Pictures of Lily podcast episode on my experiences with Johnny. That classic episode will give you a lot of context for this interview, which took place on February 4th, 2003, in person here in Los Angeles. I spent a few days with Johnny in various locations, but I feel like the majority of this interview happened in the green room at what was then the Craig Kilborn show at CBS Studios. That's why you hear some random voices here and there. I stayed at the studio with Johnny all day through his performance on the show. I remember Craig Kilborn coming into the dressing room to say hello. He was very tall, and everyone in the band greeted him in their accents from various parts of England. Then Craig said, "So you guys are from Orange County," which was hilarious and endeared him to all of us immediately. It was a fun time. Here's my interview with Johnny in its entirety.
Around the time of the last Electronic album, I started to kind of write in a certain way. And I think that's kind of evident on when you hear Twisted Tenderness record. In fact, a couple of the songs on that record could have easily been Healer songs, and Bernard not liked them and wanted to sing on them. And Vivid, which was the first single I unusually wrote all the lyrics for. Bernard ended up changing some of them to suit him, but I cut that particular track with Zach, and that was around the time that Zach and I met, and so that was a while ago now. But I was getting back to writing more of a rock kind of song, and in doing that, there's a really crucial element that you need, and that's obviously the interaction with other people. In the past, I've enjoyed the freedom that technology gives you, in that I always viewed technology, in particular the computer, as a very compliant set of musicians. No bitching, no complaining, no drug problems. It does what it tells you, what you tell it to do most of the time. And occasionally throws up a few musical surprises, so that was cool. However, with what I wanted to do with this band, there's a certain kind of spirit in it that you just can't design, or you can't buy as a plug-in, and you just can't put it in afterwards. And although I wasn't looking to particularly form a group, as usual in my life, and I think most people's life, if they look hard enough, the right people showed up at the right time. First it was Zach, who I met in New York and wasn't introduced to or anything. He introduced himself in an elevator. I didn't even know he was a musician. I didn't know he was a drummer or just an English guy. And we had one of those kind of instantaneous sort of hit it off kind of meetings, and then went and had a cup of tea, and we found that we had a lot in common. And then ran around New York for a couple of days being friends, and arranged to play when we got back to the UK, just for fun really, if nothing else. When we did start to play, I got this feeling that I know from being literally 14, 15, which is you've got a new friend, he plays a different instrument to you, he's as obsessed about what he does as you are, about what you do, and you make a good noise together. And at those times, the feeling is really beyond what the critic's going to think, what the fans going to think, record company this, what do we call the band. It's just this kind of familiarity that you have with the situation. And that was that then really. And I thought we may as well put a group together around this thing. And of course I intended on finding a frontman, sort of singer type, and that was where all my energies went whilst we played with different bass players. But also during that time we were in no rush, just like the meeting with Zach was fortuitous and it came back in the right way. I didn't really want to force anything, so I was really more than happy to do the last electronic album and then produce Haven, and when I met with Beth, spent some time writing with Beth Orton and whatever other stuff I've done, which has been quite a bit, touring with Neil Finn and all those things, and keep coming back until all the pieces were in place. During some point during that time, Cooler Shaker called it a day, and a mutual friend of mine and Alonzo's just said that we should get together, and that was critical. That I was recommended by someone who I know and trust, because it's all about being able to have something in common with people. You know, if you're kind of okay as a musician, but you've got a hell of a lot in common with me and I like you as a person, I'll just send you to boot camp till you're good enough to play. The reverse is never true. I don't care if sort of musicians got lasers coming out of fingers, you know, when they play, and a CV like even longer than mine, you know what I mean? If you know, if you're just some kind of corny head, takes cocaine and drinks too much alcohol, and with a nightmare boyfriend or girlfriend, and money issues and all that kind of crap that happens in bands, I'm not interested. So, you know, look, so Alonzo and Zach are the same as me in that regard. You know, seen it, done it, and pretty clued up. And that was that really. And then I still went on a hunt for a singer, and that took a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I went through tons of CDs, and eventually I did find a couple of guys that would, you know, had the appropriate hairstyle, and I heard were nice guys, and they were unknown, which was important to me. I didn't want to work with another known singer.
Everybody in the band was already known in some way.
Yeah, but
if you have like a known singer, then you're like some kind of supergroup.
Yeah, well, I've been through that before with electronic.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, I didn't want to form another group with a known singer out of respect to Bernard Sumner and Matt Johnson, because I didn't want them to feel like they were just part of this famous list of people. And that was a big part of it.
That's ridiculous, right?
Well, it just didn't feel right. Well, electronic stayed together as long as we did, having only done 3 albums, when I knew people wanted to hear more because of the friendship. You know, and you know, I'll always be sort of privately proud of that. Really, you know, you know, when people say to me, "Where have you been? What have you been doing?" and you should have made more records over that period. I understand it and I agree with it. But what was the alternative to kind of like drop a friend to be in the pop charts, or to fulfill, you know, someone else's idea about a career? Just wasn't right. So anyway, I found these 2 guys who I hadn't met yet, and I played them to the band almost as a fait accompli, because I've been through so many singers and I know a good singer when I hear one, and I thought these guys were the answer to our prayers really. And the band went off to a cafe and came back and put it to me that I was wrong and that I should be doing it, and that the vocals on the demos, which had just been done purely for demonstration purposes, because they didn't want to get into an audition scene, were good, and they've been living with him and they liked it. So that's how that happened.
What happened to all the other people in the
Well, the other people happened because they were like hanging around and goofing around the studio. And
Because when you and I spoke last, there were 6 people.
there were 6, and there were originally 6, and I was really into the idea of tribal, and I was really into the idea of having a synthesizer player full time, and also I wanted some girls in the group because I've worked with girls pretty closely, more so than most other guitar players. You know, Chrissy Hind, Kirsten McCall, Beth Orton, a little bit with Marianne Faithfull. I always felt really good.
Do you know I have a really hard time getting along with female performers?
Right. Girls are sometimes weird with girls.
I'm weird with girls. Anyway.
You're weird with girls.
Weird.
Because girls are weird with girls, aren't they?
They're not trustworthy. That's the main reason.
And there's a lot of competition going on.
Well, I think they feel competitive with me. I don't necessarily feel competitive with them. I don't know what it is about female artists, but they're okay with everybody that's also a musician.
Ah, right, okay.
That's
I
what I've
noticed that.
noticed.
Right, okay.
Because I'm like going, but she is okay. She is an okay person. But the fact is that they're way more ambitious than male performers.
Right.
Way more.
You're right. I think there may be a little bit of a hang-up. It doesn't seem that way with Chrissy, but it seemed like with Kirsty.
She's accomplished so much, Chris.
Yeah, and she accomplished straight off the bat. She
Yeah.
accomplished stuff. No, with Kirsty, for example, she opened my eyes to something, which was that she would. I know she felt like that she wasn't taken as seriously as she ought to have been, and in all honesty, I remember feeling that she was being slightly defensive and a bit neurotic, when in fact, when I did interviews in the early 90s and was talking about what I was doing, and specifically Kirsty McCall, you could just tell the journalist was like waiting to put his finger on the pause button. And I came back from that the tour, having been talking about Kirsty, and I knew she was right. There was this feeling. I think times have changed somewhat now, but she was definitely regarded. Her fears, unfortunately, were her fears about being seen as the singing wife of the amazing Steve Lillywhite were actually quite true, I think. And it's only really with the passing of time that she started to get a little bit of respect for what she did, and particularly since her death, that people have realised that she had more balls than most of the so-called, attitude guy singers, certainly out of the UK. She had the wit and intellect and all those things that you find in her songs, and she was a genuine artist. So she had reason to have a little bit of a chip on her shoulder, I think. She was constantly she'd been patronised, really.
I don't know that the girls that I know that are performers have chips on their shoulders necessarily, as much as they're just so driven. That's really all that exists in their lives. Like everything else is secondary, which I think is great. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No,
it's a good thing. But at the same time, it doesn't really make for a very realistic friendship or any kind of relationship with me. Not as a journalist. I mean, as a friend. I mean, most of them I meet before I interviewed them. It's not like we started out as journalists, this kind of relationship. We started out because somebody introduced us.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got
just
on.
as people, right?
Yeah, and whatever. And through all of the ones that I've met, I'm only really friends with one. And she's an English girl, and she's coming over. And she sent me an email today, and I'm going to go meet her in the different cities and stuff, like to that point.
Right.
So it's not like it's impossible for me to get along with these people. It's just that there's more to her. She's more well-rounded. She knows herself better. She's not weird.
I think female performers that I know are generally more self-reliant in now I think of it than male performers.
What do you mean?
I think the guys that I've worked closely with need a partner or partners or a team.
Oh, you mean like they're better off like as a solo artist, so to speak?
I mean that.
Because I don't think they're self-reliant musically.
No, but I think they're probably easier at forming bands and at sort of basically
finding a support group.
Finding a support group, yeah. I don't know why that is. I've never really thought of it.
I guess maybe because the guys or girls who work with them know that this girl's going to be the focus and it's not going to be us, whereas with guys it's more like a struggle for attention, maybe. Well,
there is the theory. Well, I don't know. It's the theory that I know this is an old one, but that guys have a knack for delegating better and are better in teams. That might be an old-fashioned notion.
I think it's true.
I don't know why it is.
Guys are always friends in a group, aren't they?
Yeah.
And girls not necessarily. they're only friends in a group until they find guys to go hang out with. And then they all just play golf.
I don't know what all this shows about me, because I've always really been able to relate to girl performers.
Yeah, but boys can though.
Yeah, I suppose, but I relate to everyone in the same way anyway. But ultimately, for me, it's, no matter who I'm working with, it's all about the song, that particular song that we're working on at that time. Subjectivity completely and utterly takes over for me, really. And whatever is going on in the outside world, I've got a little bit better as I've got older. I do at least acknowledge that there's things going on outside the studio door now. But they really are very much secondary to what's actually coming out of the speakers. And it's one of the reasons why I kind of try to take care of myself now. Because the amount of sort of nervous energy that I kind of muster up in seeing something through, even if it's just one song, is enough that takes it out of me anyway. I think that's maybe why I'm able to get along with people. I do wonder why, I've been able to collaborate with so many people very closely. I think it's good for other people to have my kind of passion on their stuff.
You should read what Gary said about you. It explains what you're trying to say. He says what you're trying to say really
right.
well. I mean, he says it really simple, but it's exactly how you are.
It's really,
you're not trying to impose yourself on the situation.
No, not in the slightest. It's not about me. It's about the music. I'm trying to be one of these people who's, when someone says you're at number 5, I've always thought, no, the song's at number 5.
Right.
I'm not at number 5.
Right.
I mean.
Yeah. But yeah, so you want to have girls in the band?
I wanted to have girls in the band, but not because I'm so right on, but because I just got really tired of what was going on in England. This sort of I got really, really bored of this sort of lad culture thing. And particularly as I had a certain kind of association with it, which I found a little bit alarming, and still do. I wonder how the fuck that happened.
Well, because all the lads look up to you.
I went from my first album had a picture of Joe D'Alessandro getting blown off on it, and now I have guys, builders winding the windows down, going, "Johnny, geezer!" Thinking, shit, man. I mean, I'm all right with that because I'm kind of I'm not exactly a wilting wallflower, but one of the reasons why I think my guitar playing is the way it is because that kind of macho things really old-fashioned when I was growing up anyway, and I think the sort of guys who kind of gravitated towards my playing have been, I now know have been influenced by me were a certain type of person, Bernard Butler or guys from Radiohead. They're not exactly jocks, and they know it's kind of a really old-fashioned kind of corny concept. And these bands I just thought, if I'm going to be in a band, I really don't want to have a bunch of sort of guys with their shirt hanging out, the trousers kind of stood up against a wall, the middle finger up,
right.
Which is kind of what was going on in England. It was either sub-Oasis or sub-Nirvana. The students were just trying to be Nirvana and the Pixies, and the guys who was too stupid to be students but had some musical sort of interest were just, had this kind of fake sort of Gallagherisms, which I think Gallagherisms should be actually included in the dictionary. So
we're calling it Gallagher.
Really? Oh, so someone's already got that. Well, it's all right for those guys.
No,
because they're the real thing.
That actually came from a stutter, and it became a word.
Really?
Yeah.
Gallagher. That's fantastic.
Because there was 2 people with the same last name staying in a hotel, and we were shouting for a while, and then they were saying Gallagher.
That's
and it just kind of stuck.
That really should be in the dictionary.
I know, but I haven't. I'm trying not to let it go around because they got enough bad.
Oh well, no, it's all right for them because there's I'm talking about people who. What I mean is people who grab the shadow and miss the substance.
Exactly.
But when the Smiths spawned a load of really deeply irritating people who grab the shadow and miss the substance as well. Just as irritating. I mean, in a polar opposite kind of way. These lots of these guys who thought they were gay for a year, and who went around irritating people at parties by playing this charming man very loudly and dancing very badly.
And a friend of mine who's a novelist actually put it in her book, and I realized she had the theory too. Where we have this feeling, and I think, I'm not saying that this is the case with you, but I think it's kind of what you're saying where, sometimes when she's we think that musicians despise their fans, and it's not that you exactly despise the fans, but you despise the people that are that's happening because of that, you know what I mean?
No, this has been put to
It's
me
not the
before.
same thing.
No, it's been put to me before because, you see, in my case, you see, I actually feel that people who like me and a lot of people who like the Smiths.
Like me, meaning you, the guitar player?
Yeah,
like who they think you are?
No, like my music,
right.
And that includes the and electronic and the Smiths. And these people who really like the Smiths are a lot of Smiths fans, and always were, who don't live in a black room and who aren't stood on a bridge with their pockets filled with rocks, ready to jump in the river, or clutching a gladioli and their journal for comfort. Whenever I've been asked over the years about the Smiths fan and how the Smiths fan's going to react to, say, when electronic formed and I was playing synthesizers or guitar that sounded like synthesizer, like suddenly there would be a wave of people throwing themselves off buildings because they couldn't handle this. It was really irritating to me that there's this stereotypical Smiths fan who I'm kind of making a joke about, really only exists in the mind of certain male journalists, and that's because the male journalists are talking about themselves. Because the fans, I know you're not accusing me of this, but I've always assumed that 99% of the people in the Smiths audience, and who've then gone and followed me and are still sort of interested in what I do now, are like me.
Yeah.
And I did when I first started out. I was just trying to make music for people who I thought were like me in my country first, and anything beyond that was like just beyond my dreams, and I still sort of do that.
Even the annoying ones?
The very, very few of them are annoying, and if they are annoying, it's only because they're misguided. They've read too many articles.
Exactly.
No, because anyone really who actually comes to a show that I do, whether it's with the or electronic or the Smiths, particularly with the and electronic, because it's the whole post-Smiths nonsense and drama, are by definition are very unlikely to be annoying to me, because people who annoy me are people who are violent. And people who drink too much and are sexist and all that. Now, if someone comes up to me and says, "Is it true that you said this about and blah blah blah?" I kind of think, well, that's only really surface, because the fact that they're actually here, as opposed to being, down in some titty bar, it makes them,
That's what it
gives us something in common anyway. And I just frankly think that for someone to be stood there wanting an autograph, and for you to just like sign it and just send them on the way, just turns you into someone like David Lee Roth. And also the people who come up to me, they're not the sort of people who make a habit of aren't in the habit of going up to musicians and saying these really sort of profound and personal things. They're just not. I can see it in their faces.
Yeah.
So and it is very humbling, And you'd have to have some absolutely gargantuan type ego to put it down to your own brilliance.
Yeah.
You really would, and then you'd be ultimately
people,
a really fucked up and lonely person if you did.
But that's what I'm saying, is I think a lot of people are like that. I think very, very few people are like you in the Skype I'm talking about.
So I'm told, and it surprises me.
Listen, you know how many people I come across. You're in a percentage of maybe like three. I'm not saying the 97% are assholes. No. I'm just saying they're not this thoughtful about it and this considerate about it. They're just kind of neutral about it.
Well, I think some people, to be fair, maybe went into the idea of being a musician, a professional musician, coming to the this is just theorising, you've got me totally philosophical for some reason, but some people maybe go into the idea of being a professional, and even if they're artistic, with the idea that it automatically gives you a key to the executive sort of bathroom, and that elitism is part and parcel of it. And I never grew up with that idea, and it's not because I'm a particularly special person or anything. It was always about it was because the actual sound and the notes and melody and feeling was almost like this mystical thing, and to be able to sort of swim in that kind of in that, so I think of a word other than soup, but in that feeling was akin to just a total escapism for me, and that's what it's about. I get to swim in those noises, and that's why I always regard it as a privilege. The other stuff, the celeb stuff, never really was that important. Of course, I thought it was really cool to like have girls chase you and guys want to dress like you. Yeah, that's really fantastic. But it was compared to this, absolutely pretty much insane association I had with sort of the escapism of music and all the things that music brought you. Just getting out of your senses, getting away from your senses, because sight, touch, smell, taste, and hearing is not enough for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anyway, so getting back to the band, what happened to the other 2-3 people?
Oh yeah, I don't. Well, we got, because I was on the same management as Oasis at the time, which I'm not anymore.
Obviously.
Yeah. They heard the demos and invited me out to go out, and I just so happened to be putting this record together, and it was always about the record first for me, always. You worry about the band stuff after you made the thing, with this great synthesizer player and this girl who was playing congas who we talked about last time. It was amazing, and I thought, right, okay, and they just pulled us out and I said, right, we'll be a tribe, let's do it. And then so I thought, right, okay, I like the idea, even though I'm not a retro head, I really liked the vague idea of having a modern version of the Jefferson Airplane, because all the girls I knew were like in the Jefferson Airplane. They could identify with Grace Slick and thought that here's somebody who can hold her own with a bunch of guys. She's not doing the pretty, she looks pretty sassy, she's sexy, she can write words, and also I wanted some congas, I wanted like some percussion, and this girl Liz fitted the bill perfectly. She is an amazing person. She brought Lee along, so I just got really hung up on this great tribe. This is a way of doing something that is completely away from that whole kind of English lad thing. And we went out, and the anarchy that the three other musicians brought to the setup, the band and my environment, was absolutely fantastic until we actually got out on the road. Because then, unfortunately, anarchy's no good to you then. You actually do need to be on the bus at 11 a.m. There was just too many crazy minds to deal with, really. It was just too, it was time for a certain amount of kind of pragmatic realism to kick in. And I think I realised a lot of that from playing with Neil Finn, because Neil's an open-minded, interesting guy, but ultimately, when you're the leader of the band, if you turn up here at a situation like this, and half the band are missing because they smoked too much DMT in the morning, then I get pissed off. So we just had to keep it. We just had to keep it down. Plus, I'd taken so much time to do it that the other three just kind of drifted off and got bored.
Right. There's just kind of like a natural kind of separation.
It's not, but and I ended up getting them to play on the record, and I'm going to end up getting them to play on the other tracks. But they were like not real band guys, and I thought that was going to bring a really good element to the band, because I didn't want it to be too muso and super group. And they proved themselves to be exactly that, because Liz and Lee went back to the rainforest in Australia, and Chink, went back to playing up in the hills in North Manchester, and they weren't like tongues hanging out drooling. I'm in the band with Johnny Marr, and I liked that. I really liked it. But I didn't realise they were so into kind of doing things other than rock music. Right. And I'm glad they did. And the point is, I've never had an idea to go and collaborate with anybody until I've met them. And then it's pretty much always been whoever, Beth or Haven or Neil Finn, saying to me, I'm doing this thing, and would you be involved in it? And they're always very sort of respectful and ask me in a very nice way, and I'm more than happy to do it, because I already think the person's pretty good. But I've never. There's only been 2 occasions that come to mind where I hadn't actually met the people before I went into the studio. First was Talking Heads. The second one was Beck. but on both those occasions, people who were working on those albums said to me, it'd be really good if you come down, and they want you to come down.
And you knew them.
And I knew them. But I always say, well, what's the vibe? What they like. And of course, I had an idea that working with David Byrne was going to be an interesting prospect. Similarly with Beck, he wouldn't want to work with Beck. He's a great musician, but I was aware that there was a good vibe down there, because actually, frankly, most people who make interesting music tend to be pretty cool people.
Right.
There's a rule of thumb, but there's plenty of people who've asked me to do stuff that I just wasn't feeling their music, and I just demurred. No.
You didn't like them as people?
No, I mean, people from out of the blue who I didn't know, who've had their people call my people. But I've never ever had my people call anyone's people.
Do you have
ever?
people?
I don't actually have people. Come to think of it, no. I have a person. It was the same person that I had when I was 17, 18.
Yeah.
It was Joe, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
He was the missing piece in all of this coming together.
Yeah.
Creative and almost poetic angle, and is very obviously a product of the early 60s pre-Beatles beatnik aesthetic, and it's fantastic to have that around, that sort of existentialist slant on things, and
such a
poetic
music lover.
Undoubtedly, and he was one of these guys who's always loved, saw the nobility of being in the background, never wanted to be in the foreground. People he admires were always visionaries, but also the ones who were a footnote. He was always more than happy to be a footnote, certainly in the Smith story. Without wanting to bag him, I know of only 3 or 4 managers as such who are literally the other member of the band, and there's Kit Lambert and his relationship with Pete Townsend, and Peter Grant with Led Zeppelin, and Rob Gretton with New Order and Joy Division, and I've had that similar relationship with Joe, and as do Haven and did Marion. So so anyway, the collaborations thing was it's always been like really natural,
Right.
and it's been always been about following the music, and rest assured, I'll tell you, however nice I thought someone is, if I wasn't hearing in myself on the track, I would have, found a pretty convenient way of developing influenza or, deafness.
Yeah. What about when you're producing somebody? How do you approach that differently?
Producing other people, which I do rarely, but I feel I've got a knack for, is actually more taxing than producing yourself, because it's just impolite to not to put 100% into somebody else's thing. With Marion and Haven,
and this project.
And this, but when you're producing other people, particularly when they're younger, and it's their first album, you've got such a responsibility, because you get really close to those people. Well, for a start, I can't work with anyone for a long period of time unless I get close anyway. Really close. And therefore, you've got all their dreams and their, idealism riding on it every morning you wake up. And literally one of the reasons why I don't produce as much as I do, as much as I'm asked to do, is because my first waking thought is that bridge right? I don't think the outro works. The tempo on take 3 was wrong. The running order is, and this is what I go to sleep with and what I wake up with every day until the album's finished. And it's a lot of emotional investment, and I might as well put that amount of emotional investment into myself. And that's why I don't do it as much as I can, because I can't switch it off. It becomes a mission. You're climbing the mountain.
And like you say, when they're young, that feeling. I bet you remember it still, that.
Oh, if I fucked it up, I'd feel like such a dog. I'd feel terrible. So I really get off on that thing where you're really pushing the band and you've got a vision for it and you know how the song's going to be, and they trust you because you've got this closeness, and they go with you, and then when they're listening back to it and it's all done, you can see that they think, is this us? Can't believe this. But also I've always worked with people like say Phil from Marion and all of Haven, who got what I was saying and then said, right, I'm going to go with you on this, and aspired to follow a certain lifestyle and a certain kind of standard that I impose on myself. They kind of go, yeah, I normally, like Joe, you meet people and you think, these guys are ready to go the distance. And I just say, right, okay, well, do this, do that, do this, and, you know, it's a good idea that to, you know, maybe take yourself a little bit more seriously sometimes.
Yeah.
In Haven's case, they were more than up for it, you know. It's like shining a light, and you go, there it is. You know, saying that there's where I think one should go, and they go, yeah, we agree with you, you know.
Yeah. What are you getting out of the Healers that you can't get with other projects that you've done?
That's a good question. There's a certain kind of music that I want to make that I don't think anyone else is doing. And there's this idea that I've got in my mind, and a feeling that I've got in my mind, that I started to realise was never going to come out unless I did it myself. And it's a certain kind of, hopefully cool, unafraid to kind of be rocky, philosophical, rock and roll with a groove that probably sounds very good when you're stoned, as well as straight. Because one of my friends said that to me, you know, said, well, for someone who stopped smoking pot, you made an album that sounds really good when you're high. So maybe it's just all.
But I've never been there. It sounds alright to me.
Yeah, well, they do to me as well, you know. So. I don't know what it is. I normally think that what I do is pop music. Pop in America means something slightly different, as you know. Pop just means shit.
The songs are not necessarily shit, it's the packaging. They're not necessarily shit songs.
Right.
You have to, you know, like, just listen to the song and just, like, don't worry about it.
I'm not saying the songs are shit. I'm saying that quite often I say pop, and you can see that I have to acquaint myself, explain myself, because it's come to mean something else. But, you know, I've always regarded pop as having a certain kind of nobility anyway, and it's
just short for popular.
Yeah, exactly, and it's totally valid. There is a little difference, though. There is a slight distinction between pop and rock, which I've tried to ignore, in that I think Neil Tennant reckons that rock musicians, when rock musician tries to write a song, he's automatically trying to write something timeless and classic, and a pop musician is trying to write something of the time that is okay to date. I'm okay with both those things. What happens with me is that I try and write something just of the moment, and I've been lucky in that they kind of still sound good a few years down the line. But I'm not trying to write something specifically. I'm not trying to write Blowing in the Wind every time I write a song. I'm just trying to write something that my mates will like. And as I said to you earlier, people who I think are like me, and that might be someone in Australia, it might be people in the US. Don't think of them so much as fans as people you
might be able to relate to.
Yeah, I can relate to, yeah. And again, it comes back to that thing of getting away from this stereotypical, just that question about how I feel about my audience. I never underestimate the audience, and I never overestimate certain journalists.
Are you tuning airwaves?
Yeah, do you know I carry a huge industrial. Where did you get them from?
Brought them back from England last month.
I've got boxes of them in my guitar trunk.
Fucking brilliant, aren't they?
Two of those babies, yeah.
Right? Eucalyptus menthols.
Two of those babies on a snowboard. Whoa, that's about the extent of my high these days. Yeah.
So is this the first time? Is this the most lyrics you've written?
Yeah.
Was that hard?
No, because I got on a roll,
right.
And they all kind of came from the same place, really.
Where is that?
It was a period of my life where I was kind of concerned with finding out what made me tick, and again, with the assumption that I was like a lot of people of my generation at least. And for example, like Caught Up was, I'd heard the phrase "I'm running amok," you know. I heard that a few years ago, and I remembered that when I was in my teenage years, I wondered about that phrase "running amok" because it was said to me twice. Once by a teacher and another time by my friend's parent. And it was used in derisively, is that the right word? And both these people, the teacher and my friend's mother, were pretty neurotic and uptight people. And, you know, I was basically, when I was being told off, it's like, blah, 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 you're running amok. And the second time, you run amok, the second time it was said to me, I thought, what is it with this phrase? What's wrong with you people? You know, because I was fairly highly spirited. And then I heard it a few years ago. And on TV or something, and it reminded me of like how I felt about it when I was a kid, because I wore it almost as a badge of honour. And both these particular occasions, I took it as being like that someone was really a bit jealous of my high-spirited nature. And I was carrying the concept around for a bit, running amok. You know, isn't it a shame that people feel like they can't run amok? You know, I'm not talking about obviously going through shopping centres with a machine gun or anything. And then I made some kind of connection with the idea of a boat out of control running amok. And then I started to think about, this is like this sort of train of thought I got on. That led me to thinking about what happens behind a boat, a ship, the wake. So then I thought this idea, like people feel like, a lot of people, I think, feel like they're living in the wake, in the surf, in the froth of, and the circumstance of events, rather than, and myself included sometimes, rather than steering the ship. And I'm not saying that I have any solution to that, but I thought, well, what a shame that life can be like that, really. And it was this idea of when you get the chance, as I sometimes do when I'm playing music, I feel really like free, and I feel like I'm running amok. And as I've got older, I make an effort to try and identify those times and go yeah inside, yes. And as I say, it doesn't happen as often as I'd like, and that's how the whole song came about, really. You know, it's just, you know, I'm caught up in the wake, shored up, I'm running amok. You know, it's like he's just trying to get away from the wake, get on it, and just steer.
So that's like the start of the whole train of thought.
That was the whole start of the whole, and so the songs are sort of fairly abstract, and In Betweens was a song I got really obsessed about feeling like a target for for corporations who are trying to make everybody into a cultural stereotype or a demograph, partly because of men's magazines. You know, and I would see these things and think, well, is this what I'm supposed to be? Or is this what people, you know, the people who are making a lot of money assume that men of my age are like? That we really aspire to be at best Sean Connery. And that coincided with a decision I made to completely, an experiment I tried, which was avoiding all media that I could, because some of my friends are intelligent and interesting people.
Only some of them?
Some of them, yeah. Exactly. Very good. Completely addicted to the news and information. And some of the conversation was littered with stuff that I thought they're going to forget next week, but they're getting all really fucked up about it. And a couple of my friends were addicted to CNN. And I had this whole sort of idea that everything ultimately is about advertising. And that, you know, the news, the media, whether it's through newspapers, magazines, or particularly television, really should have a responsibility to be at least factual, when really the responsibility is towards keeping people sat on the sofa so they don't channel surf, because that way the advertising revenue stays high, you know. And further to that, bad news is more compelling. You know, I'm trying to explain this very long theory right as quickly as I can, but I have a friend who works in the news in the UK, and I asked her the question: if there were 5 news stories, 3 of them were pretty significant, amazing things of heroism that had happened, and 2 of them were negative, but were kind of like in some like little city somewhere or whatever, which would be reported? And she said, you know, in a heartbeat, she said, well, the 2 negative ones. And I said, run this theory by that. Is it the case that the responsibility from the media is to keep you glued to that one channel with fear. And she said, without a doubt. Same with the radio. And unfortunately, fear is more compelling and negativity than feel-good stuff. And you'll stay there, and then you'll see the advertisements. So all this was bombarding me, you know, at a certain period in my life, and I just thought, okay, try an experiment, avoid it. When the news comes on television, switch it over, leave the room. When the radio comes on in someone's car, ask them to turn it off or put a CD on. And I did it as an experiment, and it was a really good idea because it made absolutely no difference to my creative life or my personal life. You know, I'm a parent, so I don't want to bring the kids up in a world that they're not going to be adequately equipped to deal with. But I think I do that anyway. You know, I think I do an alright job of that, and that's because I protect them from all this like fear, as much fear as I can possibly do it. So In Betweens came out of that idea of self-protection, finding out what was in me and protecting it as I was walking down the street, from every billboard, from every radio, that was, you know, from every news report, protecting this thing, and deciding that people like me feel in between these labels that are imposed on us. I'm not the first musician who said, you know, I don't want to be a label man, but you know, it was like, no, I don't want to be. I ain't. Whatever you're targeting me as. Oh, I get it. I'm a male 30 something. Oh, okay, right. So well, what about, you know, my friends who, I'm not quite cross-dressers, but don't want to look like Mr. Macho, don't want to wear Timberland shoes and chinos, you know what I mean? Just aesthetically. And, you know, I've got a girl who are very close, my daughter who are very close to me, without trying to avoid sounding like Sting, but actually really not only being okay with my feminine side, but really trying to find it, you know, and be modern about it. I think it's the way. So liberating for someone like me, coming from where I've come from, and suddenly being okay in between, having a completely open-minded view of esoteric matters, you know, whether it be mediums, clairvoyance, spiritualism, Sufism, Scientology, even Christianity, Hinduism, and not giving a shit. Just being open-minded about the whole thing, not being labelled a kook or New Age, which I certainly don't think I am, and not being, you know, like some kind of just sports fan. I'm in between that on those issues. You know what I mean? Not, you know, like not being kind of dealing with gays as being Judy Garland sort of, you know, show tune freaks. It's just all that real kind of that we all know is like totally cliched, stereotypical shit. But really, if you look at the messages that come from the media towards us, it's what powers that be would have us believe is our own self-image.
Right.
And that's why I wrote In Between. So I think there's a certain kind of thread going through the album, which is about.
It's pretty introspective.
It's really introspective,
and, like,
yeah.
Kind of evaluating things that are affecting you on the inside.
Well, I'm totally assuming this. It comes back to this thing that I'm assuming that people who have grown up listening to my stuff know what I'm talking about.
Right. Wendy's having a heart attack.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I will be sharing print versions of this interview for the paid tier of the Pictures of Lily newsletter, where I've already shared the print version of my electronic interview from 2000. The Pictures of Lily newsletter goes out every couple of weeks, and you can subscribe to it for free. For my paid subscribers, I'm posting bonus newsletters that include print-only interviews from my 33-year archive, including classic ones from the 90s with a cross-section of people from The Cure to Oasis, Blur, Portishead, Daft Punk, and more. For founding members, there are additional interviews with Noel Gallagher, Damon Albarn, more Daft Punk, Talvin Singh, and Richard Ashcroft. I will link the Pictures of Lily newsletter in this podcast if you'd like to subscribe to it for free. Any paid subscriptions to the Pictures of Lily newsletter go straight to supporting the production of this always free podcast. I'm going to once again suggest that you go back and listen to the previous Johnny Marr episodes of this podcast. I will link them all in the episode's notes. For myself and my co-producer and editor, Lauren Schroeder, thanks for listening. And if you have a chance to subscribe or follow the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, please do so, and please rate and review. You can connect to us on picturesoflily.com, and from there you can choose your preferred podcast platform, or Instagram, or Facebook, or YouTube, or Pandora, or Amazon, or Audible. You can also find the playlist for the podcast episodes on Spotify and YouTube.
Take it from me.
Thanks for listening.
Pictures of Lily.